From pushing SpongeBob to his limits to dropping wisdom no one asked for, here are the times Sandy's friendship was more of a hazard than a help. And it all kicks off when a rogue bottle slams into SpongeBob's noggin, delivering a message that'll turn Bikini Bottom upside down in the episode Rodeo Days. SpongeBob and Patrick are having the world's least impressive staring contest when out of nowhere a bottle drops from the sky, literally embedding itself right in SpongeBob's head. The missile bottle is for Sandy, so our duo rushes to her house with no idea how to get in. Their solution? A book titled How to Open Things, because apparently door handles have been elevated to rocket science now. Sandy karate chops her door open, naturally, because that's how Texans answer the door. She then treats SpongeBob and Patrick to a round of beatdowns before finally realizing they're delivering a letter from her long-lost brother, Randy, who's calling her back to Texas for, wait for it, the rodeo.
Randy says the rodeo's come to town. I've got to head back to Texas and defend my championship title.
Sandy, who's never shy about overselling herself, declares she's got a title to defend. And then we're off into a Wild West musical fever dream where Sandy sings about all the joys of rodeo life.
But they sure look mighty pleasing.
AKA wild animals, death-defying stunts, and the grand highlight, a mob of scary clowns waiting to cheer up anyone sad enough to need it.
Yippee-ki-yo!
At this point, SpongeBob's ready to jump out of his square pants. Nothing says fun friend quite like a terrifying crash course in a world of dangerous livestock and unsettling rodeo clowns. So off she rockets back to Texas, leaving SpongeBob a mess of anxiety. But our spongy boy isn't giving up. If the entire population of Bikini Bottom won't join his DIY Save Sandy crusade, he'll just bloody drag them all along whether they like it or not. And so everyone wakes up in a gigantic bubble floating their way to Texas, whether they agreed or not.
Good morning!
SpongeBob! What's the meaning of this?
Sandy's in trouble, and I need all of your help to save her from the horrors of the rodeo! There are clowns there!
Yay! And guess what? Instead of cheers for this act of heroism, Sandy's furious. Not only did SpongeBob accidentally make her lose her rodeo match, but she's also not exactly thankful for the whole unconsented bubble trip. She lets SpongeBob have it with a classic,
Next time, leave the rodeos to me.
it's a chef's kiss moment in the art of misplaced friendship loyalty. And unsurprisingly, it ends with SpongeBob sighing,
Aw, nuts!
finally cluing into the fact that Sandy's dedication to winning comes miles ahead of any friendship obligations. And after all that, you'd think Sandy might ease up on the whole winning at any cost thing, but no. Next up, we're diving into Chimps Ahoy, where her ambitions only get wilder. So we start with the boys happily testing out their prized goofy goober back scratcher, living their best lives, scratching each other's backs, and just generally making way too big of a deal out of it. As you might expect, their first thought is to share this miraculous contraption with their best friend, Sandy. But when they roll up to her tree dome, it's Panic City. Sandy's on edge because her bosses, who happen to be literal chimpanzees, are coming to check on her progress on her inventions. And if they're not impressed, bye-bye Tree Dome and possibly Bikini Bottom. Now, SpongeBob and Patrick, ever the bloody optimists and the oblivious ones, why not take over for Sandy and show these chimps what we can do? So they throw themselves into inventing mode, a move about as wise as letting Patrick run a marathon in flippers. After Patrick suggests some already invented masterpieces, like a pencil and a mirror, they finally come up with a monstrosity, a back-scratching, hair-combing, nose-picking ukulele tuning device. And to their credit, it kind of works. At first, Lord Reginald, one of the chimps, gives it a try and it's all good until the machine suddenly goes rogue, switching from gentle ukulele tuner to straight-up combat mode, smacking him with a ukulele and then assaulting him with random weaponry. Pure chaos, my dudes. Sandy arrives just as the machine is treating Reginald like a piñata, gasping, "SpongeBob, what the heck is going on here?" At this point, the chimps decide they've seen enough of this shit. It's time to close down Sandy's lab. But hold up! Dr. Marmalade flashes a banana, which triggers Sandy's Nutcracker invention, a device that somehow manages to peel the banana perfectly. The chimps go bloody bananas over this, deciding that Sandy's earned her funding for another 20 years.
It may be the extreme head trauma I've suffered, but I am going to offer you a 20-year contract with a substantial pay rise.
I accept.
Hooray!
Meanwhile, Patrick decides to test out the malfunctioning machine on himself, getting absolutely whacked by it, and loving every second. This dude has some weird fetishes, man. So yeah, Sandy could have just let SpongeBob and Patrick know she was handling her own business, but hey, where's the fun in that? And just when SpongeBob thought he had Sandy figured out, here comes Sandy, SpongeBob, and the Worm, where she decides to prove her toughness at the expense of literally everyone's safety. It's a peaceful night in Bikini Bottom until this absolute behemoth known as the Alaskan Bullworm starts chomping through town like it's an all-you-can-eat buffet. This thing takes chunks out of anything in its path, including SpongeBob's entire pineapple house.
2 scoops, please. Thank you.
The next morning, SpongeBob rushes to the Krusty Krab to share his horror story, and the townspeople are already freaked out enough to believe him. They know they need a plan fast. Krabs, of bloody course, thinks it's a perfect sales opportunity until the crowd pelts him with condiments to keep him on topic. I wish I could do that to some people. Patrick pipes up with his infamous suggestion,
Should take Bikini Bottom and push it somewhere else.
Obviously, that idea is immediately shot down by Squidward. When the townsfolk agrees someone needs to take down the beast, Mr. Krabs scoffs that no one would be reckless enough to volunteer. Enter Sandy, who not only volunteers, but announces that the worm has already bitten off her tail. With her pride and appendage on the line, she's not about to back down.
What? But Sandy, you don't know what you're up against. We're talking about an Alaskan bullworm!
SpongeBob's face, however, says it all. He's in full panic mode, begging her to leave it alone. But Sandy's off to face this monster solo, with SpongeBob reluctantly trailing behind her as the rest of Bikini Bottom finally decides to give Patrick's city-pushing plan a go. SpongeBob catches up with Sandy, still trying to talk her out of fighting the bullworm. She's convinced that her strength and skills make her unstoppable, and his warnings fall on deaf ears. Ain't no dumb old sea worm gonna make a meal of me. I'm Texas tough. Even when he tells her he has her tail and offers up a paperclip and string to prove it, she dismisses his fear as pure cowardice.
Oh, don't go! Don't go! Don't go!
The two finally reach the worm's lair, an ominous, drooling cave that should have been enough to make anyone with a shred of common sense turn around. But oh no, not Sandy. She dives right in, wrestling what she thinks is the bullworm and tying it in a knot. Proud of her victory, she parades her handiwork, only for SpongeBob to point out that, yeah, she just wrestled its tongue. Cue the horror as the entire cave reveals itself to be the real Alaskan bullworm, complete with teeth the size of surfboards and a nasty-ass attitude to match. The worm springs to life, furious and ready to chase down its next meal. Sandy finally realizes she's in over her head, and as they sprint for their lives, our spongy boy can't help but remind her he was right all along.
Are you happy now?
I knew it.
The two manage to evade the worm with some quick thinking. Sandy uses that paperclip and string combo to snag a coral branch, swinging them both out of the worm's path and send it flying off a cliff. Crisis averted. Or not quite. Meanwhile, back at Bikini Bottom, the townspeople have actually moved the whole city to the bottom of that cliff and are giving themselves a round of applause when the worm crashes down, squashing everything in its path with one last pitiful ouch. And that, friends, is how Sandy's stubbornness nearly destroyed an entire town. You'd hope the worm incident taught Sandy a thing or two about picking her battles, but nope. In pressure, she's ready to take on the entire ocean to prove land critters reign supreme. It all starts innocently enough. SpongeBob and Sandy are chilling, watching clouds go by. SpongeBob thinking he sees a flower in the sky, until Sandy reminds him that they all look like flowers. Then they start talking about a casual climb up Coral Cliff, and naturally it turns into a who would win conversation. They can't just enjoy the idea of a climb. Hell no, they're too busy one-upping each other. Sandy goes full Texas squirrel mode, challenging SpongeBob to a cliff race. She bolts, gets ahead, and totally crushes him. Not one to take an L, SpongeBob challenges her to another race, this time to the Krusty Krab. And guess what? Yep, my dude wins. Sandy is not having this crap. Now it's a full-on pride battle with Sandy throwing down some big claims about land creatures being better than sea creatures. She waffles on and on, listing all the things she's convinced sea creatures could never do. Right on cue, SpongeBob, Patrick, Squidward, and Krabs jump in to roast her back, pointing out that, yeah, Sandy's pretty useless underwater without her helmet and suit. But rather than admit defeat, Sandy stubbornly doubles down and rips off her helmet right there. Bruh, not smart. She's gonna breathe underwater on sheer stubbornness alone, but duh, she can't. Before long, she's scrambling for a makeshift helmet, a pickle jar. Talk about bloomin' desperate. Then Sandy issues the ultimate dare. If they're so dang tough, why don't they come up on land and last a whole minute without flopping around like fish out of water? Thinking it'll be a piece of cake, the gang confidently accepts and heads to the shore. But the second they hit the sand, the bravado starts fading fast. They hesitate, but there's no way they're giving Sandy the satisfaction of backing down. So they all hold their breath and make a mad dash to the surface. To everyone's surprise, they don't just survive, they actually start to enjoy it up there. They run into a couple of seagulls and make some small talk, feeling pretty proud of themselves for conquering land. Oh boy, shit's gonna hit the fan. Yeah, their victory is super short-lived. Once their 1-minute timer dings, Sandy heads up to congratulate them, only to find her friends getting dive-bombed by seagulls. Sandy finally clocks that maybe this wasn't a great idea and jumps in yelling, "Holy guacamole, you can't eat my friends, you rats with wings!" I'm stealing that phrase. Bloody brilliant.
Holy guacamole! You can't eat my friends, you rats with wings!
Sandy jumps in, swinging and shouting to get the gulls off her friends. Once everyone's safely back underwater, they all agree that maybe, just maybe, both land and sea creatures have their strengths and weaknesses. SpongeBob and Sandy apologize to each other, realizing they got way too carried away in their competition. With everyone licking their wounds, they join in a little cheer for humility, while the flying rats, now battered and balding, join in too from the shore, letting out a pitiful caw of defeat.
Hooray!
And just when Bikini Bottom thinks it's safe again, Sandy's back at it, this time with a lab coat and a new sidekick in perfect chemistry. Let's just say SpongeBob's about to learn the downside of being her friend and her guinea pig. The episode kicks off with SpongeBob and Sandy working on a teleporter in the tree dome. Their goal? Teleport Sandy's acorns to Texas. Duh. But the teleporter fails to launch her acorns anywhere but into oblivion, leaving Sandy scratching her head and SpongeBob still wowed by whatever they just accomplished. Meanwhile, across the street at the Chum Bucket, Plankton's cooking up a gas. Literally. He's finished his latest Krabby Patty formula stealing scheme. A machine that transforms him into a gaseous cloud, perfect for sneaking around. The logic of this makes zero damn sense, but whatevs. Cue the maniacal laughter as Plankton activates the contraption, instantly turning himself into a greenish puff of plankton perfume and drifting over to the Krusty Krab. When he slips through the vents and into Krabs' office, Krabs' reaction is priceless. His first instinct is pure horror at the stench. With zero hesitation, he whips out a fan and blows Plankton right out of the building. Plankton's new form sends him blowing all the way across town and directly into the tree dome. Called it. Naturally, our spongy boy clocks the gas cloud as Plankton right away, but Sandy is less horrified and more, well, impressed. Instead of throwing Plankton out, she's like,
You were able to convert yourself into gaseous form? Fascinating!
and they start talking science. Before you know it, she's waltzing over to the Chum Bucket to work together with the tiny evil genius to combine their inventions. SpongeBob is left completely in the dust, watching Sandy and Plankton geek out like two mad scientists. When he tries to join in, Sandy basically pats him on the head and says,
Why, you'll have the most important job of all. You'll be our test monkey.
Test monkey.
Poor SpongeBob. Once they arrive at the Chum Bucket, Sandy and Plankton waste no time hooking SpongeBob up to the teleporter and attaching cables and wires as if he's a piece of lab equipment. Yikes. When they test it, things go hilariously wrong. The first try just teleports SpongeBob's eyes to the Krusty Krab, where Squidward takes one look and shrieks. Meanwhile, Krabs, totally unfazed, assumes Squidward had indigestion. SpongeBob's back of the chum bucket in one piece, but Plankton and Sandy keep testing, teleporting various parts of his body until they finally get it right. Sandy is so excited she grabs him, screeching, "It worked!
It worked! We transported his whole body this time!
With SpongeBob's body successfully teleported, Plankton reveals his true motive. No. Really? Plankton had an ulterior motive? Never would have guessed. He traps Sandy and SpongeBob in a cage, thinking he's finally got the Krabby Patty formula within reach. He zaps himself into a bottle next to the formula, thinking he's won. But just as he's about to celebrate, Sandy flips the script and teleports the formula right back to their cage, leaving Plankton stranded and scrambling in his little bottle prison. In a classic Sandy move, she smugly declares she knew Plankton was only in it for the formula the whole time, laughing evilly as Plankton bangs around helplessly. Meanwhile, SpongeBob is probably still processing the fact that he was just used as a teleporting guinea pig, all while Sandy basks in her victory over Plankton with zero guilt. As if teleporting her friends wasn't enough, Sandy's next big plan? A rocket ship. In Sandy's rocket, we get to see what happens when curiosity, Patrick's recklessness, and Sandy's tech obsession collide in a one-way trip to chaos. It all starts with SpongeBob swinging by Sandy's tree dome only to discover she's built a full-on rocket ship with a one-way ticket to the moon. Naturally, SpongeBob is immediately obsessed and begs to come along. Sandy initially shoots him down, saying this trip is for science, not for some whirly-bird repeat, and insists there's not even room for him on board. But SpongeBob turns on the old charm, or maybe just his relentless persistence, and she finally gives in. Sandy lays down the ground rules. This is about moon rocks, not aliens. Then she pulls out her net gun, explaining it's for collecting samples, and no, Spongy boy, it's not an alien blaster. With SpongeBob on strict orders to keep his alien paranoia in check, Sandy tells him to show up bright and early to take off. Of course, SpongeBob's nighttime plans take a damn detour when Patrick swings by with his so-called alien repellent. SpongeBob and Patrick sneak over to the rocket to spray the windows, but Patrick's, well, subtle entry ends up inside the rocket, followed by SpongeBob. In classic SpongeBob and Patrick fashion, they can't resist pressing buttons and flipping switches. One accidental launch sequence later, Sandy's beauty sleep is interrupted by the sight of her rocket taking off without her. As SpongeBob and Patrick experience zero gravity, thankfully saving them from a nasty fall, they have a bloody blast looping around the moon, only to crash land straight back in Bikini Bottom. At which point Sandy pipes up with,
Sometimes that SpongeBob is as dumb as a sack of peanuts.
My dudes are convinced they're now on an alien planet, and they decide every fish in Bikini Bottom is now an alien in disguise. I mean, you could just start a religion like Scientology, but hey, just zap the peeps instead. With Sandy's net gun in hand, SpongeBob and Patrick go full space vigilante, capturing one innocent citizen after another. Sandy eventually finds them wreaking havoc and immediately loses her shit, rightfully chewing them out for ruining her experiment. But before she can even finish, SpongeBob and Patrick spring into action, shooting her with the net gun and dragging her to the ever-growing alien collection. Sandy tries to explain the whole misunderstanding, but they slam the door in her face without a second thought. To add one last layer of bloody ridiculousness, Patrick starts suspecting SpongeBob of being an alien. He attempts to shoot him with the net gun, but accidentally captures himself, leaving SpongeBob the last true Earthling standing. Thinking he's got to get home to Earth ASAP, SpongeBob fires up the rocket, which shoots up, does a few flips, and lands smack on the actual moon after running out of gas. When SpongeBob finally looks out the window and spots Earth, it dawns on him that he's fudged up, like big time. Back in the cargo hold, the entire population of Bikini Bottom, all tightly packed in netting, glares at him ready to have a word about his whole alien invasion theory. In short, Sandy's quick decision to entertain SpongeBob's moon obsession ended with her entire hometown captured in a makeshift alien prison. Nice going, Sandy.
SpongeBob!
We aliens would like a word with you!
But Sandy's back with another plan, only this time she's trading space for survival skills. In To Save a Squirrel, she whisked SpongeBob and Patrick off for a wilderness experience. And let's just say her definition of fun outing might be better suited for, well, actual squirrels. So SpongeBob and Patrick, sprinting in terror, convinced they're being hunted by some monstrous beast. Turns out it's just a cricket from the surface, but Sandy has little time to laugh at their dramatic display. She's busy packing up her Jeep with all the essentials: food, water, tents, and, naturally, explosives. You know, just another day in Bikini Bottom.
But he's not gonna hurt you, see?
SpongeBob and Patrick, always ready for a chance to tag along, beg her to take them on her wilderness trip. Sandy shuts that down real fast, explaining that her chosen campsite is too dangerous for them. And she isn't wrong, but that doesn't stop SpongeBob and Patrick from sneaking into her trunk anyway, because what's more dangerous than nature? Unsupervised SpongeBob and Patrick in nature. On the bumpy ride out, the inevitable happens. They get tossed out of the Jeep along with all the supplies, and Sandy just drives off without realizing. When the dust settles, SpongeBob decides they should set up camp. He's barely given the order before Patrick's fire-starting skills turn the entire food supply to ash. Then their tent goes up in flames right after, and in a panic, SpongeBob uses the last of their water supply to put it out, then drinks what's left for good measure. If this were real life, they'd be dead, brah. Dead! With no food, no shelter, and no water, they're left stranded in the wilderness with one brain cell between them.
It's my turn.
Sure, Patrick. What do you think we should do?
Maybe.
After some stellar brainstorming, which, let's face it, goes nowhere, Patrick suggests they play hide and seek, which somehow leads them to a nearby cave. Just when things start to look somewhat hopeful, they meet an old man who announces that he's been living in the cave for 40 years and, spoiler alert, there's no way out. But wait, what? But then how did we all end up here? Anywho.
He's in great shape. Look at those muscular arms. His rock-hard abs. And that great complexion. Why, he's glowing with health.
SpongeBob and Patrick, feeling pretty defeated, try to make the best of it until SpongeBob starts eyeing Patrick like he's a fresh Krabby Patty. The old man, who seems weirdly invested in their survival skills, suggests that SpongeBob strike first before Patrick can make him into a snack. Oh, okay, that escalated to cannibalism quickly. Soon enough, SpongeBob and Patrick are seriously plotting each other's demise, and let's just say it, it's not their best look. But then, plot twist, the old man reveals, "I'm not just some old hermit, I'm Sandy Cheeks, survivalist extraordinaire." Yep, it was Sandy in disguise the whole time, just running them through a little survival test to see how long they'd last. She hands them survival badges, which they should probably just hand right back because they definitely failed. But it doesn't end there. Sandy's little game has brought out a new side in SpongeBob and Patrick, who now look at her like she's a delicious snack. They pull out a bottle of ketchup ready to make Sandy the main course, sending her running for her life. Karma! So, Sandy's brilliant idea of a survival test not only broke SpongeBob and Patrick, but unleashed their primal snack-hunting instincts. For a friend who's supposedly looking out for their safety, she sure knows how to set them up for a total disaster. So, after Sandy's disaster-prone helpfulness, we move to a different kind of crash and burn with Ripped Pants, the episode where SpongeBob takes a single joke way, way too far. It's a sunny day at Goo Lagoon, and SpongeBob and Sandy are having a blast. Enter Larry the Lobster, Bikini Bottom's resident musclehead who invites them to lift weights. Now, Sandy's all for it, ready to flex her athletic skills, but our spongy boy, let's just say he's not exactly built for this. While Larry and Sandy are showing off with impressive stunts to a crowd, SpongeBob can barely lift a stick with 2 marshmallows. It's mortifying. And then, in the middle of his epic struggle, it happens. Rip! SpongeBob splits his pants, and Goo Lagoon erupts with laughter. This one dude is canning himself so hard, he slaps SpongeBob on the back and declares he's the funniest guy, like, ever. Sandy even agrees with the dude, sorta.
Ain't he the funniest little sponge you ever saw?
It's embarrassing, sure, but the crowd loves it, and SpongeBob decides to milk this moment for all it's worth. so he starts cranking out one ripped pants joke after another. At first, it's all fun and games. People laugh, Sandy chuckles, and SpongeBob is having the time of his life. But my dude doesn't know when to quit. He keeps pushing the joke further and further until everyone at the beach has hit their bloody limit. Then, in one ultimate attempt to get a laugh, he fakes drowning only to pop up with yet another ripped pants bit. Now he's crossed the line, big time. The crowd rolls their eyes, Sandy is horrified, and everyone collectively decides they've had enough of SpongeBob and his one-trick routine. Crushed, SpongeBob tries to come up with even more gags, but this time he's met with nothing but crickets. Even his pants seem to give up on him, symbolically taking on a life of their own and ditching him in the sand.
Ripped my pants.
He stumbles upon a whole-ass group of people who also made fools of themselves in public, and in a moment of clarity, SpongeBob realizes he's blown it. So he channels his pain into a heartfelt song about losing friends over a joke that went too far. Sandy, touched by his vulnerability, forgives him, bringing SpongeBob's social status back from the depths. Just as things seem to end on a high note, he signs off by ripping his underwear in front of Larry, hitting that embarrassment mark one last time. Oh, for fudge's sake, SpongeBob. If there's one thing SpongeBob's good at, it's committing to the bit, even when it's absolutely unnecessary. In short, this one's on Sandy for letting SpongeBob spiral with his terrible joke. A good friend would have pulled him aside and said, "Enough with the pants jokes." But no, she let him flounder, leading him into ultimate social exile before finally stepping in at the last minute. I mean, a real pal would know when to pull the plug. Well, that's a luxury SpongeBob won't get in pre-hibernation week, where Sandy's idea of bonding is just a step away from a full-on survival camp. Let's see how many fun activities SpongeBob can survive. The chaos kicks off with Sandy frantically raking her leaves into a perfect Texas shape while SpongeBob is, well, attempting to rake with a tool better suited for a squirrel. But he's in good spirits, blissfully unaware that Sandy's got a bloody ticking clock of 168 hours before she starts her months-long nap. She's not about to take it easy. Nope, she's planning to do every last high-octane, spine-shattering activity she can think of, dragging our poor spongy boy right along for the ride. SpongeBob, bless his optimistic heart, offers to spend all his non-working hours with her, not realizing that Sandy's definition of fun is basically SpongeBob's definition of mortal danger. They go sandboarding, beat each other senseless at the Sea Needle, play a game of Extreme Jacks, whatever the hell that even is, and tackle Find the Hay and the Needle Stack. Of course, with each new activity, SpongeBob finds himself narrowly dodging a trip to Davy Jones' locker. Eventually, it's all too much, and SpongeBob does what any sensible sea sponge would do. He goes into hiding under Patrick's rock, desperately hoping that Sandy doesn't find him. But Sandy doesn't take kindly to SpongeBob's sudden disappearance. Rather than thinking, gee, maybe I overdid it, she goes into full-blown panic mode and rallies all of Bikini Bottom into a search party. But this is Sandy, so this isn't your typical, let's put up a few missing posters and call it a day kind of search. No, she sends people off to bloody Sulphur Fields, leech farms, and poisonous Urchin Cove. And when the townspeople beg for a break, mentioning their responsibilities like taking care of their kids, Sandy's response, bring the kids along, they can crawl into places adults can't. The longer the search drags on, the more Bikini Bottom realizes they're in a damn hostage situation. Fish try to trick her by pointing out SpongeBob in the sky or presenting a SpongeBob-shaped cereal box, but Sandy's having none of it. So in the ultimate act of desperation, the entire town dives under Patrick's rock to hide. Now, you'd think Sandy might get the hint, but no. She bulldozes through the city looking for SpongeBob until she finally finds him, thanks to his oh-so-loyal friends throwing him out of their safe spot like a hot potato. Sandy, absolutely thrilled to have her buddy back, hugs him and immediately gears up for more insane activities.
Come on! There's just enough time to go atom smashing!
What the hell even is that? SpongeBob, practically pleading for his life at this point, finally tells her he's done with the death-defying games. Sandy doesn't even get to hear his heartfelt plea because she falls right into hibernation mid-sentence, leaving SpongeBob to collapse from sheer exhaustion. And as the townsfolk peer nervously out from under Patrick's rock, Patrick himself comes home from shopping and freaks out at the random strangers camped out in his home. In the end, it's just another day in Bikini Bottom where Sandy's extreme lifestyle nearly ends SpongeBob's existence, all in the name of friendship. But next, she sets her sights on helping Squidward. In Squid Defense, she's on a mission to teach, whether he likes it or not. Let's see how this one pans out. It starts with Squidward just trying to get through a shift at the Krusty Krab when SpongeBob accidentally karate chops him. SpongeBob, as usual, is doing his best impression of a karate master in the middle of work, and Squidward's not having this shit. Later, Squidward is out grocery shopping when he runs into the Creepy Creeper, a thug-looking fish who's given him major bad guy vibes. Naturally, Squidward panics and bolts to SpongeBob, begging him for karate lessons, because if he's gonna defend his canned soup from hooligans, he might as well be prepared. But since this is SpongeBob we're talking about, he's pretty useless at teaching karate himself, so he drags Squidward to Sandy, the self-proclaimed karate expert of Bikini Bottom. Sandy reluctantly agrees to help, but only after making Squidward promise not to use his newfound skills for revenge. She's not about to let Squidward become some karate-fueled vigilante on her watch. The problem is, she's not exactly patient with him, and when it becomes clear Squidward's no karate prodigy, Sandy has him doing every chore in the tree dome under the guise of learning the basics. Squidward's doing all her housework, from stacking acorns to raking leaves, as she claims it's all teaching him movement. Right. She's basically just taking advantage of him, and he's the only one who doesn't see it. But then, after all his efforts, he quits only to accidentally pull off a series of moves that he didn't realize he'd learned. Somehow, all the chores have paid off. Sandy, satisfied that Squidward might actually know a thing or two, presents him with a karate belt. However, Squidward's got other plans. He's got important business to attend to, by which he means tracking down the Creepy Creeper for a little payback. With a newfound karate master attitude, Squidward finds the guy and unleashes his chore-fueled skills on him, using moves inspired by the tedious tasks he endured. But here's the nut twist. It turns out that the thug never wanted to steal Squidward's groceries, he actually just wanted to return the items Squidward dropped. Of course, by the time Squidward realizes this, he's already karate'd the poor guy into the ground. Cue Sandy and SpongeBob arriving just in time to witness Squidward's misuse of his training, and they're furious. Sandy revokes his belt with a scolding. Looks like he's not worthy of this belt after all. Thanks for dishonoring our trust in you, Squidward. And SpongeBob, never missing a chance to be dramatic, also walks off, leaving Squidward standing there, dishonored but completely unbothered. He's got no shame and considers himself a karate master anyway. Just when you think it's over, an officer shows up to arrest Squidward for assaulting the thug. The ultimate punchline? All that effort, all that training, and Squidward ends up behind bars. Classic case of everyone, especially Sandy, who turned him into a glorified chore machine, learning absolutely nothing. But hey, I'm just a guy who likes cartoons. Catch ya in the next video.
Wow, I did it!